Okay, welcome back to part 2 of the Marvel Vs Capcom 2 arcade video. If you're wondering what had happened here is I had fought another battle and I had actually lost. So, and I cut that loss out and I just picked it up where I had selected my characters again. The only difference here is I left Sakura out and picked Cammy instead. So I had added those characters together, and as I'd mentioned in the first video, I actually have selected the alternate costumes by pressing the assist button. And I definitely have to say, I love this Cammy costume. I think she looks so awesome with these colors. And I thought what the funny thing was is I left Sakura out, and of course, the first thing that happens is I end up facing Sakura. I just thought that was a bit of a funny thing to happen. But yeah, we're back in the Glacier stage, and as I mentioned, it's a really cool thing. And you'll see the alternate costume for Akuma here. She has like a regular Ryu gi on. You know, the Ryu's gi, just the white one instead of the one that he normally wears. And BB Hood Valletta has kind of a purple thing going on. And the good thing in this playthrough is instead of having to worry about using those extra levels to do Dark Sakura, I didn't have to worry about that, so I had a lot more power to do my ultimate combos. And that's one thing I've loved ever since the first Marvel vs. Capcom game. I mean the first versus game. Is that Cammy can do her cannon drill in the air, which was something that wasn't possible in like Super Street Fighter 2. And I believe a lot of the characters could actually do like air moves, whereas they might not have been available before. And I can definitely say that Sentinel is really strong compared to some of the other characters. I wouldn't really call him overpowered, but he just seems to like really give you a pounding. The only thing that's really good about like facing the Sentinel is that as opposed to some characters, he's really big, so hitting with him with your like ultimate combos and everything is much easier, so you don't have to worry about certain hits not hitting him because he pretty much takes up most of the screen. His head like almost touches the life bars. So it's very easy to hit him, which is a very good thing if you're facing him. But you know, not so much if you're the actual person controlling him. Of course, the thing that would really be horrible is if you were playing this game on location and it was just a fresh board placed in the arcade and you didn't have all the extra characters, because I can honestly tell you, the selection of characters when you have no characters unlocked is very, very, very limited. So, it's very good to have all the characters unlocked, and to be more specific than I was even in the part 1, the actual arcade version came out in February of 2000. Now I'm guessing Jin there was doing some sort of like super mode or something, kind of like how Colossus does something. I believe Zangief does something as well. Or as the guy in Super Street Fighter 2 always said, Zangief. Which I always thought was funny that he said it that way, but maybe that's the proper pronunciation. I always said Zangief. Speaking of which, there he is. If you hear a creak every once in a while, that's like me sitting back or sitting up in my chair. Now, one thing that was really cool about the Japanese version of this game is since a lot of the Capcom machines had that special control panel where you could plug in a Dreamcast controller, you could actually have your VMU plugged in, and what you'd end up doing is you would be earning points to bring back to your Dreamcast version, which I've actually done a few times with my, I have a memory card which I've dedicated just for running on Naomi games. And if you've ever played the Japanese version of Marvel Vs Capcom 2, there's something called endpoints. And the only way to get those is to actually play the game in the arcades. I've actually ended up earning those endpoints. The only problem is you cannot earn V points, which are called versus points that can only be earned by doing online versus. And since at this point the online versus is pretty much non-existent, sadly that means there's no way to earn any of the online, the ones that you have to get the online versus points for. So the only real way, unless you have some way to network a bunch of Dreamcasts together, is to just download a save at this point. I definitely say it probably was stemmed more from when I was young, but even as much today. But whenever I see Zangief trying to do one of his grabs, especially when it's like one of his super combos, it always just freaked me out a little bit, the way he looks like he's trying to grab you or kidnap you or something. And of course, this is Ruby Hart. She's like the new character for this game. And I definitely just say these versus games are some really great games. If you've never played them, I'd recommend starting all the way from the beginning with X-Men vs Street Fighter, either on the CPS2 or on the Sega Saturn, which would be the two best versions of it. Well, if you watch my videos, the PlayStation version was serviceable, but it was just really not worth it if you can get a hold of the other versions. Although, even as I'd mentioned in my other part, the Naomi and the Dreamcast versions, in my opinion, are the best versions of Marvel vs. Capcom 2. It's not to say the other versions are bad, but I just find these versions to be far superior because, as I've probably mentioned in like 12 and a half of my videos at this point, the only thing that differs in the Naomi 1 and the Dreamcast hardware is that the Naomi has double the system memory and 4 times the sound memory. And the reason why you had 4 times the sound memory is that it had to basically run this music off of a cartridge as opposed to spooling it off of a the GD-ROM. So that kind of gave it the ability to have that like near CD quality audio without having to run a Redbook off of the CD. But other than that, a lot of these Dreamcast games, especially if they weren't like really, a lot of the Naomi games, especially if they weren't really heavy-duty 3D stuff, they just ported to the Dreamcast really good. Whereas when you're trying to port any game to like an unlike console, like let's say the PS2 or even the Xbox, it just took a little bit more work, so sometimes the ports weren't nearly as clean as, say, a Dreamcast port. But as I'd mentioned, some of the more like heavy 3D stuff, since they really took advantage of that extra system memory, suffered a little bit when it came to the conversion. And one thing I always wish they'd done was like take that excellent version of Soul Calibur for the Dreamcast and then ported it over to Naomi and made like an ultra arcade version, but sadly they never did that. And as I'd mentioned earlier, that was that like kind of mode thing that Colossus would do. I don't know what it actually does. Maybe it just like makes him more armored, meaning he like takes a licking and keeps on ticking. But I'm not really sure, as I never really play as Colossus. He's one of those many characters, I would guess, if you know how to play him really well, you're gonna have an easy time of it, but of course if you don't, then he's just one of those characters that can be like kind of slow and cumbersome if you're not sure what you're doing. And I'm always like annoyed when Mega Man's Ultra Combo gets me, because he turns into like this big robot and he's like starts shooting you like crazy. And what had really surprised me in this whole gameplay, I'm gonna kind of spoil something here, but that I had gotten through the whole thing and only lost a match once, which is really cool. And I always have to say I love all the voice samples that BB Hood / Boletta here makes. I always think she sounds really cool. I like that. For all I know, when Cammy kicked Mega Man in the head there, he might have been able to do the aforementioned crazy big robot ultra combo. And when I did that ultra combo there, I was very happy that at least something from the ultra combo actually hit Marel there, which was Cammy's gyro driver. And that's one thing I was always glad about when I played this game, is that the announcer would do the like danger, so I would know that I was just about to die, and I wouldn't really be taken by surprise. Because a lot of times when you're in like the craziness of these battles, you don't really have time to like look up at the life bars when you're just desperately trying to beat the enemy. So hearing like an audio cue really does help you out there. And as you can see, the gameplay can be so crazy with all the characters flying into the screen. The actual game has to label whose character they are. Like it'll say 1P and 2P, saying that like that's player 1's character and that's player 2's character. So you don't get confused and be like, hey, why is my Akumi attacking me? Because it could be the occasion where you have like two players with the same character, and then they end up thinking whose character is whose. And now I can honestly tell you, before I get into this match here, beating Abyss here, I believe he's called, it took me forever to actually be able to figure out how to fight him. And I was very surprised I was able to get through this, because on some of my best playthroughs of this, I'm actually able to get through this form of him without really getting my first character hurt all that much. So considering how much of a beating I took in this first form of Abyss, I was very surprised I could get past him. Because basically I remember when I first played this, I was like, this is the ending boss? This is just so easy. And then of course he has two other forms, which I guess they figure, you have 3 characters, so why doesn't he have 3 characters? So now this is form number 2, the very annoying green slime man. The thing I found the most annoying is he just keeps on doing that, like fiendish laugh at you. And my basic strategy for getting past the first 2 forms of Abyss here are to basically destroy them as quickly as you possibly can, because the final form can be quite devastating, and you want to have your characters at high health as you possibly can, because then you'll have a lot more health in order to defeat the final form, who's like this big lava monster that you're going to see in a second here. And the only note I'll make is he's a little bit pixelated, but I still think it's a pretty cool boss character. But yeah, it took me like, if I recall, the first time I got to him, I was actually playing the Dreamcast version, because it was a little bit between, there was a little bit time between me getting the Dreamcast version and getting the Naomi version here. So I would say it took me a good like hour to actually beat him for the first time. And I was very proud when I finally did, because he's not one of the easiest bosses. Although I can go as far as to say he's not one of the hardest bosses either. Because the biggest mistake I've ever made with this boss is trying to do all the special moves with him. A lot of times the best strategy is just to get to the middle of him and just keep attacking that like ball thing that appears in the air. because you just basically want to drain the health as quickly as possible. And I remember playing this, I was really so surprised that I actually won that. And that's the end of the boss from Marvel Vs. Capcom 2.
Thanks for playing Marvel Vs. Capcom 2.
And I'll let you go ahead and enjoy the, I'll let you enjoy the credits here. But once again, I definitely have to say, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is an excellent game. In my opinion, it is still the pinnacle of 2D fighting games. It just really doesn't get much better than this, and be it the, any version of this game really, I would highly recommend, but if you can get your hands on the Naomi version, by all means. If you can get your hands on the Dreamcast version, then that's a close second. The other versions, they're good, but I just still like the two top versions, the Naomi and the Dreamcast, the most. Well, this has been another Game Nexus Arcade video, and I shall see you later. Bye.
Don't give up. Challenge again.